has gone astray. Don't get me wrong, it ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buggering up, but you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna start the old nation with myself for preservation. I'm gonna start the old nation with myself for preservation.
Keep the red flag flying here.
Welcome everybody to the 43rd edition of Political Unmuted, and you are welcomed by 5 very weary warriors. Footsore, aching shoulders, fingers to the bone with all that social media work, and we're here today, and thank you for dropping in as we have a weary discussion about the local elections, followed by discussions about Greensill, climate, and Durham University. I welcome the dream team, 4 magnificent players of the game. Paul Daly.
Hello.
Laura Daly.
Hello.
Mandy Townsend. Stuart Sutherland. And of course our listeners all over the world. And you are all very welcome indeed. Let's go straight to... Yes. Paul, the reason for that is that we can't hear all these jingles or anything. It's sort of only Paul can hear them. It's something secret just to make us look silly. Paul, what's your moment of the week?
So I'm going to go for the Super League, the Football Super League, the breakaway thing. And honestly, it's like, I can see why people are so angry, and it's what I've been angry about for an incredibly long time, really. Football is simply a metaphor for the society we live in, the capitalist society that we live in. And this was inevitable. But the only thing I think that people don't seem to realise that the mask is now off. They aren't pretending they care about the fans anymore. They don't care about the history of the club that they've bought for their billions. And now people are starting to get angry about this. Now, this is happening in capitalism all the time. People are controlling the things that you care about, and they don't care about you. And I think this is time that we all looked as like, hang on, what's football without the fans? Well, they're going to tap into other markets. They're going to tap into other revenue streams as they'll see it. And they will be fine as they see it. And they would play in an empty stadium. They have been playing in empty stadiums. So they're quite okay with that model. People need to make sure that they understand what is going on in the world, how capitalism is tearing the heart and soul out of their community, and how capitalism doesn't care about them. And in late stage capitalism as we are now, this is the inevitable outcome. A few teams that put themselves as elites, just as a few billionaires make themselves elites and control everything and demand all this power. And it's really interesting to see this backlash against it. And it's like, actually, it's what a lot of politicians believe in. So I found that whole thing as a metaphor for capitalism a really funny thing, and it's funny to see other people being as angry about that as I have been about like billionaires hoarding loads of wealth for years. So yeah, been interesting.
I absolutely agree with you, Paul, on that. I mean, it's the same with the high street and everything. But what I think is that it'll be, if it happens, I think there's a good chance that it's just a kind of a bargaining chip. But if it happens, people will adjust and become accustomed and move on. Sort of the anger won't be prolonged, or do you think that this is? I mean, they'll still watch it. They'll pay to view on Sky and
Again, that's another metaphor as well, isn't it? It's like people have rolled over and accepted this awful system, and they're fighting for scraps against people who come over on dinghies. You know, they really see themselves as being much closer and much more threatened by people who are utterly powerless, displaced from the homes. They feel like they're more of a threat than the people who've been controlling them for hundreds of years. I think it's about time we woke up. I'm all for political education. Go and learn this stuff yourself. I really, really hope that people go and do the reading or watch videos or learn in whatever way you can about this system. Because you know what? If you understood this system, or you do it within your trade union as well, you know, go work in your trade union. That's where I did. I didn't learn all this stuff like, you know, overnight. If you learn that, I believe you will come to a very similar conclusion to me. I'm not trying to tell you what I think. I'm saying go away and find out what you think is happening and use as many sources as you can. And if you don't come to the same conclusion as me, I'd be surprised really if you researched really well.
Thank you, Paul. That's lovely. Laura, moment of the week.
So I've decided there's always a few to choose from. Probably the most important that I've seen this week that I wanted to raise was the UN report about the racism report that the Conservatives did, and obviously there's no racism in the Conservative Party or in the UK because they've proven that because their report says so. Anyway, the UN have investigated that, and they said that no, that's absolutely not true, and in fact it repackages racist tropes and stereotypes them into fact twisting data, and it, you know, it misapplies statistics to make it look like we're not racist, but in actual fact we are. And it said it's basically an attempt to normalize white supremacy, which is a huge that is a huge comment to make, and that in itself would have been my moment of the week, but it did kind of bring up other questions for me, like, well, hang on a second, this is massive. Why is this not a bigger story? The report into racism seemed to kind of just fiddle away into nothing, didn't it? It wasn't even a story for more than a day or two. Nothing happened. And everyone just went, oh, okay, so there's no racism, class, let's move on. And then it was forgotten about. And then also now with this thing I've seen in the news at the minute where a lot of people and a lot of MPs are now signing a letter to say that there needs to be an investigation into the lies that have been touted by Boris Johnson. This would be a big one. This would really be a big one. And again, I am a Labour Party member, a Labour Party supporter. I am not here to vilify the Labour Party, but the fact that Keir Starmer did not want to sign that to say that he should be investigated for his lies, I found really difficult to stomach. Everybody knew when they read this report. In fact, most people probably didn't read it. They saw it in the news. Hey everyone, the UK is not racist, and everyone just went, oh, okay. And then that's it, nothing happens. If that had been the Labour Party, we would have been absolutely dragged through the mud. So there's a many layers of problems here, but I thought the fact that the UN came out and were like, no, this is like, you know, white supremacy at its finest, trying to hide it, was a really big deal, and it needs to be made more of than just a couple of stories shoved away in a corner somewhere. It's a massive deal.
The thing is that your point is proven by the fact that I hadn't seen that report. It's just there's a whole load of people with brooms just busily sweeping all this stuff under the carpet, and the press is complicit, but not Political Unmuted. We will not be muted. It is made plain and advertised on here. Stuart, moment of the week.
My moment of the week is Joy Allen came up to Chiltern to join me.
I saw the pictures. Yeah.
Excellent photos. Yeah, she's got a pro that comes and does it. It's not like the rest of us. She's got an assistant. So yeah, I had a cracking cracking time with Joy. You know, talking over plans and what we do. You know, it was a real highlight, I think, for my campaign. But I think it's important that we do shout out Joy's campaign. Now, you know, how important it will be to get Joy elected if we want to achieve some of the things we've got planned.
Absolutely. And what perhaps Joy doesn't understand is that she's going around getting all these people to show their support for her campaign. In fact, it is the highlight of your campaign when Joy comes and campaigns with you. Look, we've got Joy Allen, the PCVC candidate on the campaign. Thank you, Joy, for all she's doing. And she's very, very active on social media as well. And you're right, it's absolutely essential that we have a Labour voice in that. And hang on, has there been some kind of scandal about the Tory candidate for PCVC? Do I realize there's some kind of hoo-ha?
A career politician, isn't he? He's tried to be elected in every nation within the UK, one way or another.
Is that it, Paul?
Someone's asking what PCVC is. Police, Crime and Victims Commissioner. So they used to be called Police and Crime Commissioners, and they've put the word victim in there as well. So yeah. It's always nice to allow people to know what we're talking about.
Stand chided. So sorry, Paul, Stuart, what were you saying there?
Just a career politician. Some links to banking, I understand, a financier of some form. Just, you know, he's not in it for the people. I think he's in it just for the game, isn't he?
Right. Okay. Well, hopefully she'll be. And finally, Samantha.
Big news this evening. I'm a massive fan of Jessie Jo Jacobs, who is standing for Tees Valley Mayor. Doing a lot of volunteering on her campaign, and basically 2 weeks until polling day, and she's got COVID. It's the worst possible timing. She was filming a big hustings tomorrow with the BBC, and now she's going to have to appear via Zoom, like while her opponent is going to be in the studio. Like, it's the worst possible timing. And, you know, she's been like a total trooper, caring for her sister who has COVID for the last 2 weeks. And we thought she'd managed to avoid it. Her sister had it, her niece had it, her mother had it. I did ask her to move out, actually, but that's not something you can just do. So unfortunately, that's it. We've just got back out on the doorsteps, and she's self-isolating for another 10 days. And obviously, we just hope she stays well. Her health is the most important thing, but she is adamant that she is fighting because the people of the Tees Valley need Labour in power. So as long as she can still appear on a Zoom screen and not upset people who are watching her, she will continue. So obviously the Labour Party is a big family and we support each other, so I hope people will come out on the doorsteps and do those door knocking for her.
I put a sort of, I want you to, because you're on the team, I know she must not do too much. Can you remember Boris got it and he tried to keep going, he ended up on a ventilator. So she needs to be careful that she doesn't give the disease its opportunity by continuing to tire herself out. There are more important things. And to tell you the truth, by the end of this week, most of the votes that are going to be voted are being voted. It's not going to make all that much difference. But I saw that, and a very moving and tearful video as she explained what's gone on, and yes, sort of the dramas of the election campaign, and with that,
now it's time for the big story.
And sort of the big story is this week. The local election campaign. So first of all, I'm going to go to our two candidates and I'm going to ask them how it's going for them. But then I'm hoping that we might stand back and look at some of the wider aspects of it and see what's going on, sort of underneath and with the other parties as well. Sam, how's it going for you?
Yep, so we've got 3 candidates in our ward, and prior to the election, i.e. currently, we've got 2 Labour members and a Lib Dem. So we are hoping for a Labour gain. We're hoping to take all 3 seats. So we're doing our bit to retain the Labour majority. And we think it's possible because it's so much different when you've got 3 candidates all campaigning with, you know, everybody reaching out to their own social circles. For example, I'm really good on social media. Matt and Shirley aren't great on social media, but Shirley knows everybody who's ever played darts in Shildon. The Dominoes community, she's got them, you know. And Matt's a youngish lad, so he's got another different sort of set of friends and networks in the community. So I think that also helps us sort of tell the truth, which is that we're a strong, diverse team, and it's really important to have that. So we do reach out to different people in the community. So yeah, we are good in Shildon and Dean Valley. I'm feeling really positive about what we are doing. We are staying positive. It can be quite difficult at sometimes not to rise to things that are put out there. But we're trying to stay positive, we're pushing forward, and we think we're going to get all 3. Yeah.
What about the rest of Bishop Auckland? How's it going in Bishop Auckland generally?
Yeah, so we've got quite a few people retiring this time round. So the plus side is we've got a lot of younger people coming on board, which is really positive from my point of view. I think that the council should represent all age groups and not just retired people. I'm quite firm in that. But also that means that those people with that strength of incumbency don't have that coming with them. So there are some risks to people saying, oh, I want to vote for the person I've known longer rather than the Labour candidate. So that's a bit of a worry. There's a good spread of, there's a lot of Tory candidates come up that are reasonably local. So that's a strength compared to what it has been before. But the question is, are the independents and the new Tories going to sort of cancel each other out and split their own vote? Obviously, that would be great for us. But, you know, what is going to happen? How will the die fall? You really don't know. Like you say, the postal votes are dropping today, tomorrow, the day after, and most people will take their postal vote, fill it in and send it back within 24, 48 hours. So this is a really crucial time for getting your leaflets out and getting your messages out.
Stuart, how's it going for you in Chiltern, apart from the excitement of a visit from Joy?
Oh, I've had a great time.
Hang on, you're very. Is Stuart breaking up for everybody else, or is it just me?
Yeah, microphone sounds weird, Stuart.
Yeah, give your leader waggle. Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
Oh, technology, class, innit? Yeah, I've had a good time. You know, done 50 miles leafleting in like 5 days, which I didn't think it was even possible. I even met some of the candidates for the wards who were out leafleting for the Tories, and that was you know, insightful. That was fun. Met a few people from community groups, fixed a lot of dog poo bins. You know, you spot things as you're wandering around, don't you? So I think I might, you know, break my own record on getting complaints into DCC to get things fixed. You know, class time. I'm loving it.
The problem with DCC at the moment is that everybody's doing the same thing. So we're all putting in these complaints. There's so many of them. They're overwhelmed. They're just not getting dealt with. So we're all saying, I shall sort that out for you. And you're not. So it's a double-edged sword, that. What would you say is the main campaigning issue in Chiltern at the moment? What's the thing that's taking people's minds over at the moment about it?
You know, people just want a safe, clean town or village, as most people think of it. You know, people want to see CCTV in the hotspot areas. They want to, you know, feel safer in their community. The small things, you know, litter, dog fouling. These are the things that people want to see, you know, tackled and see a relatively quick change on. But I think that's something that you need somebody who's going to be sticking in the hours to get that done. I don't think you can do this on a, you know, evenings and weekend situation to really take on a ward like Chiltern and see progress.
If you, I mean, this is one of my things that sort of everybody is, this is the county council. It has immense influence over the economy, massive influence over people's health. Climate is the key thing, which is facing humanity, and we can have a massive impact there. But it seems to me to be a campaign which is being fought on dog dirt and double taxation, and I mean, sort of double taxation costs each council taxpayer £7.50. You know, that's all it is. You're arguing about £7.50 a year, about and yet these things are dominating it. Don't sort of. Are you not meeting people who are sort of looking up from the dog dirt and looking to the bigger picture?
Some people, yeah, but I think it's a sign of what austerity for a decade's done to us, where the basic stuff isn't getting done, you know, and people are, you know, really focused on that. All the expectations of what they would want done by the council are kind of getting missed out, you know, things like potholes. And it's because of the austerity that we got into this situation that we're in. And people want those basics sorted before they can, like, open themselves up to the big issues, the wider issues. And I think, yeah, if we can take on the little stuff, you know, and chip away at it, we can really take on the big stuff together.
Do you not think that this plays against Labour? That basically what people are saying, Labour have been in power 100 years, and look, there's still dog dirt, there's still people on quads doing donuts on the park, there's still potholes. Sort of, Labour has failed. Let's bring in somebody new, and they'll do a much better job. Sort of, do you not think that fighting the campaign on these things is actually losing the campaign? Is there not a danger of that?
I don't think that any one candidate is fighting on a single, you know, issue. You know, I'm fighting to get some trees back and take on a bit of, you know, ecology, and you know, across the board, you've got people fighting on all sorts of things, but the system is set up in a way to make councils look bad, you know, whether they're actually achieving what they're legally there to do or not. I mean, you don't hear the successes of social care, you know, out in the open, you know, talked about on the streets, and that's, you know, part of why councils aren't looked upon very favourably.
I just think that, I mean, you know, it's one of my beefs that it's a £1.3 billion organisation. It's a huge corporation, and sort of we're busy electing people who are promising to get sort of the green grassed over better at Walton Court. So, Sam, what would you say are the key features, the key policies that you're trying to get across in your campaign? The 3 or 4 key policies.
We have made sure that we're not really making any specific promises, and we're talking about what's important to us as people and what motivates us. So we're talking about and then bringing up examples that prove that. So we're campaigning on what we've already done and what we'd like to continue to do, rather than, I mean, one of my opposition is campaigning on the idea that he's going to make it possible to have a flu jab in Shildon, despite the fact that it is already possible to have a flu jab in Shildon in every pharmacy in Shildon. He has no idea what he's talking about. Just because his doctors wanted to send him to Aycliffe for his flu jab, he's decided it's impossible to get a flu jab in Shildon, you know. So we're talking about the fact that we've been engaged with Shildon Railway Institute, and we have actually an active interest in our heritage, and we'll do everything we can to preserve it every step of the line, and we're looking forward to 2025. You know, we have been out litter picking, and we are avid reporters of fly tipping and harassers of the council and living to get it cleared up, and we want to continue doing that, and want to figure out how we change the mechanism to make it work better for people, you know, find these little chinks in what's going on in the machinery and see if we can smooth things over at all. So that, I mean, very much what Stuart said. Actually, I have not heard anybody who is not a Liberal Democrat candidate talk to me about double taxation.
They're
Because
obsessed by it. They're obsessed by double taxation.
especially in Shildon, I mean, you in Aycliffe, your town council does so many. You run a nursery. You've got a golf course. There are loads of things that Great Aycliffe Town Council do that would not be picked up by Durham County Council should Great Aycliffe Town Council cease to exist. And it's the same in Shildon. We've got our beautiful park. Then we've got a team of workmen in Shildon that are run by the town council. We run our own cemetery. We actively like engage with clearing the road when it snows, and you know, we would just end up at the end of a very long list if that had to be done by Durham County Council. So there is a tangible, not to mention the Civic Hall in Shildon, which is a fantastic community asset. There's a raft of things that you pay for when you pay for a town council, and that's what, you know, that's what your town council precepts for. So to claim that people with town councils pay more for nothing is just rubbish politics. It's a lie, and it's quite easy to explain to people how it's a lie. So yeah, like I said, I think, and we're just campaigning on the fact that, you know me, I'm a good person, I've been in this community doing this stuff, and all I'm asking is for you to give me a louder voice to make the change that we need.
Brilliant. Thank you. Anthony Riley, the answer is yes. Paul, Wingate, what would you say are the key issues in Wingate? You have, I know that you'll have your ear to the ground. So what's going on in Wingate?
The big discussions at the moment, it's antisocial behaviour, and that's not just in Wingate, that's the surrounding villages. What they call an antisocial behaviour is maybe not necessarily just antisocial behaviour. Some of it's quite criminal damage. You know, we had Sean, who was you know, he had his house burnt down, and that was very high profile national news. So there's that, but you know, there's a lot of good work going on in Wingate at the moment. There is we're regenerating the high street, although I'm not allowed to speak about it because of Purda. It's a ridiculous thing. A lot of the good stuff that has happened has all been confirmed since Purda, and our county councillor is so by the book that he won't take credit for things. So what'll probably happen, I think he'll win because I think he's popular in the community. He's a really strong councillor. He's a good person, and I think he would win, you know, regardless of what badge he was under, because he's been helping the community for years. He lives and breathes Wingate, and obviously, like, I support him because he's Labour, but you know, he's a good councillor anyway for our village. But he's been doing all these things, and if he was defeated, I'm sure that the people would come in and be like, look what I've done in my first month, look what I've managed to do. So there's all sorts of things, like there's little things as well. There's like potholes on the roads are really badly surfaced. It's a lot of the time, it's like what Stuart's talking about, it's these little things that people care about at this level. But then I look at the bigger picture and where it's coming from, and hearing some of the comments as well, like, oh, you know, it's the family's fault. You know, I've heard that from someone. I'm not saying who, but I heard that from someone, and I was really quite disgusted. They were saying, oh, it's the family's fault for behavior getting out of control in the kids and stuff. It's not the fact that it's been police cuts. It's there's this politically illiterate thing. It's underinvestment in children. It's underinvestment in resources for the community. It's underinvestment in help. That is what is going on. And it's this lack of community that we have now in Wingate at the moment. We are pulling together as a community, which is really nice to see. And one of my favourite things that I saw about the reaction to what happened to Sean was that people were saying, let's do something nice. Let's give people something nice to be proud of. Let's do up the park. Let's have activities for people so that they can be proud of where they're from. Because that's what's been stripped from our local areas. It's been the pride in our communities that's been stripped away. And you look what the miners did with the welfare parks and, building Red Hills and, building swimming pools like in CM and all these amazing resources that the miners built because they knew that they were going to look after their own. And what a inspirational thing that they did. We need to start to recreate that as well, because the government aren't going to do it. And the more I look at it, I'm thinking Westminster politics, and by that I'm going to clarify this because I always get wrong from Ray for saying this. Westminster politics, I mean the certain political situation, without educating people, without people knowing what the problems are in our communities, without listening to our communities, and without having dialogue, which Musa I'm sure will really like as well, without having dialogue with people in our communities, we are not going to solve this. There is not a magic wand to come in and be like, I am Sir whatever, and I shall grant you all your wishes, and I know what your wishes are because I wrote them, because I had a focus group of people who used to vote for someone else last time. So they know, that's not the way to do it. We need to be speaking in communities. And one of the things I like most about the Labour Party is you have voices in every community. You have loads of people in every community who care. And that resource needs to be used for constant dialogue with the people who are there. That's what we can do.
Finally, Laura, a difficult one. Make a comment about the other parties, the Lib Dems, the Tory party. I mean, everybody who's listening knows that we're Labour and that we are going to be critical. But nevertheless, what do you think of? I mean, a lot of the people I've been talking to are saying, where's the fire in this election? It's all incredibly low key, downgraded, and everybody's sort of churning it out, but there's no fire. Do you get that as well? What do you think of the other parties?
Yeah, I'm certainly not going to endorse any other party, but what I will say is there's no fire in this election at all because of the last year and a half we've had. Everybody's just downtrodden, people feel isolated, people feel lonely, and I think the parties are feeding into that and trying to be a voice of friendliness and a voice of, hey, come to me, I know what your problems are. And the Tories and the Lib Dems especially, and then anybody else who's running, have picked up on holes that are there at the moment that are not created by current candidates or current local government for that matter. It's all national government, but they're feeding into those issues that people assume are county council level. And they've done this for years. They really have done this for years. But they're doing well at it. They're feeding into the fears of people and what people are seeing in the media, and they've picked up on it. And people don't have time to look into the facts and stuff. We're 3 weeks from the election now. It's really difficult to do, especially when all you're trying to do is just get through the day and feed your kids, and you haven't got furlough anymore and you don't have enough money, and what's going to happen, and you've got these white knights coming down going, hasn't it been awful? Did you know you had a Labour council? Well, I can offer something different. And so they feed into that. And so I think that is, we can't be complacent here. That is a genuine problem for us. We have had the last well, I'll say definitely the last 2 years, but actually in my entire lifetime, we've had politicians offer the world and offer these dream scenarios that are just complete fallacy, that will never happen, and that they are false truths, false hopes. And we are seeing a lot of that now. It's just that those false hopes are a lot smaller now. We will fix these small problems for you, because at the minute everything's a problem.
I mean, I was at a meeting earlier today, and one of the candidates there said that he trusted the people, that the people who vote know what's going on, and they know when somebody's trying to sort of scam them. When they know false promises when they hear them. I don't know whether I'm so sure. I mean, do you think that people are going to fall for these false promises?
Honestly, I think a lot of people will, and that is not I don't mean to denigrate normal people. Normal people are busy, and the fact that we're into politics and we have time and we make the effort to research all the bits and bobs and all the promises and all the legislation and all the real parts of it. Unfortunately, most people just think, well, do you remember that fella who knocked on my door last year? Oh, actually, we're not having a really good time at the minute. Who's our councillor? Labour. Well, we mustn't be doing well. And I think politicians really do live in this weird bubble where they just don't have a clue what people think. And so, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people, I think we need to be realistic about this. A lot of people will fall for this because they don't know what's true and what's not.
My mother thought there was a Tory all her life, and then the Lib Dem MP candidate and knocked on her door, and she voted Lib Dem on the basis of that single visit. For the rest of her life.
Exactly.
20 years she voted Lib Dem, and sort of it was because nobody else had ever not bothered to knock on her door. Anyway, sort of thank you very much, everybody. We have run out of time. Some lovely comments going on the comment section, which I'm sure we'll pick up on, and particularly Graham Marsh asking and starting a little bit of a discussion about whether it's just that people don't care. Is it that people don't care? I don't agree with you, Graham, but sort of we'll talk about more in the after show. What we're going to do now is
the story like the back of my hand, 'cause I've heard it all before.
Thank you.
Jane Strange. I absolutely agree with you about that one, Mind. What astonishes me is that nobody seems to care. Nobody seems to care at all. But anyway, right, okay, very quickly. 3 things to go, and we've got 20 minutes to do 3, 7 minutes each one. Paul, tell us all about the Greensill scandal and what you think about that.
Okay, so that is. Firstly, I'm going to talk about what lobbying is, because I'm going to try and get people to understand what goes on in Westminster. So lobbying is when you ask the government to do something on your behalf. And anyone can do this. Anyone can lobby. So I can lobby the government to change the law on education or anything like that. You're allowed to do these things. But what we have is we have a system in which people who can afford to have full-time lobbyists, and there seems to be a revolving door between lobbyists and politicians. So David Cameron was well known for fighting against this. He hated the idea of the revolving door between lobbyists and politicians, and he knew the system was corrupt because you can't do that, because your access to people. If you have great access to MPs because you used to be an MP, then that will give that person an unfair advantage. And he fought very hard against lobbyists, so much so that he set up a commission to try to look into this. And it's now looking into him because after 2 years of being a minister, you're allowed to be a lobbyist. I think he waited 2 years and a month before becoming a lobbyist himself. for a company called Greensill. Now, Greensill, what they do is, like say if the government have a contract with an external provider, so the government, want to pay someone, Greensill act as a middleman between them. So if you want a service and that person wants to be, someone contracts that service out, Greensill was acting as a middleman, says, we'll give you your money straight away with no delay, but we'll take a cut. And then they were acting as a middleman, so they were a really superfluous company, really, if anyone could wait a month. But anyway, David Cameron was on their board and he had loads of shares, 60 million worth of shares on there. And obviously, as a former prime minister, he had access to the to government. He had access to Rishi Sunak, and what was happening is Greensill were really, really struggling to get to make ends meet during the coronavirus pandemic. So what David Cameron did is, in order to make sure Greensill didn't go under and he didn't lose his 60 million in shares, he started texting Rishi Sunak saying, oh, come on, can you please give us one of these coronavirus loans that we don't qualify for? I know we don't qualify, but like, can we have that anyway, please? And Rishi Sunak was like, hi, Dave, yeah, we'll look into that. We'll try and sort you out. But as it turned out, they actually didn't qualify at all, and he didn't do that. I think this whole situation... Greensill went bankrupt, by the way, so David Cameron lost all his 60 million and is now worth nothing from that deal. He's still got plenty of money, so don't lose any sleep over this. Oh, by the way, the person who runs Greensill, Mr. Greensill, who's an Australian man, worked free of charge for David Cameron for a while, and then David Cameron became a lobbyist for his firm. So all these things should be setting alarm bells off. This is the system. None of this is illegal. We should be furious about this, and we should want this to stop. However, this is the system in which we live. Get yourself up to date with it, because I think most people are absolutely horrified at the level, I'm going to use Jane's term here, the level of corruption that we see. I think most people would see this as corruption, but they're seeing it as, this is just the way it is. This is the way we've always worked. And you can see this revolving door. And it's not just the Conservatives. It is a lot of Conservatives. But let's say, look at Change UK, the people who defected from Labour. They all got themselves lobbying roles for these awful companies who do awful things like bailiffs and, or the gambling industry who try and take money from poor people. And, they did awful things, those MPs. They went off and did some terrible things when they realised they didn't have a seat, because they still had access to Parliament and lobbying through those MPs that sit in Parliament. So, it's a really corrupt system. What we need to be doing is we need to be getting decent working class people into positions where they can stand for members of Parliament, because at the moment I don't see that much of that. I see principled people every now and then, and if they are principled, then the lobby and the media lobby will come for them, and you're not getting out of there without your reputation being smeared all over the place. So that's where we are. I think what we need to do is just make sure we understand what's going on, and I think it's incredibly important to do so.
Thank you, Paul. Next question, Stuart. Climate crisis. Basically, what the claim is that and it follows on from what Paul's just been saying, that the claim is that the government is just too cosy with big business ever to do anything to deal effectively with climate. Tell us all about this, what's going on here.
Well, building on what Paul was saying, the democracy that we've got isn't going to be able to solve what's going on with the ecosystem. The vested interests that are adjacent to this government show no willing to move away from the status quo, and it's more of the same, isn't it? It's directors, MPs who are directors on various companies who are big polluters, and we're seeing internships to civil service positions from, oil manufacturers. It's really disturbing stuff. What's happened is Peter Newell, who's a professor of international relations, he's done a bit of a report on it and highlighted some of the key facts of why we should be really worried about this government, even moving it the slightest bit towards a greener future, let alone to achieve what needs to be achieved in the short time that we've got.
Sam, is there an answer to this? I mean, we've basically had the same answer to two questions now. Is there a solution to it all?
It's a really good question, and the answer to the question people are asking is it time to stop lobbying? And that kind of misses out the things that Paul was saying, was that, you can get together a group of residents and go to your local councillor and say, this is a really important issue to me, and we are standing together and showing our strength in numbers, and that's lobbying. So the question is, do we need to change the rules about what MPs can do after they finish being MPs and prime ministers? And I think there's a really strong argument for that. It used to be that once you'd finished being the prime minister, you'd go off into your retirement into the House of Lords. But our previous prime ministers, like David Cameron, have chosen not to do that, so that they've got more freedom over their sort of tax business and things. So there's a really murky situation, and as life expectancy gets longer, I mean, somebody said, you look at somebody like Barack Obama, he's potentially got like another half of his life left to live after his presidency. So obviously people need to work, people need to do things, but perhaps we need some kind of ban on that kind of involvement in politics once you've left politics.
Laura, I mean, we know about the chumocracy, and of course the truth is that all these people have been, many of them have come from posh families. So we do in our country indeed have a pedigree chumocracy. The fact is that is it the system that's wrong, or is it just that we need tougher rules about how you're allowed to lobby?
Oh my God, the system's wrong. 100% the system's wrong. And actually, what I'd say in response to what Paul and Samantha have just said, they're absolutely right that once you've been an MP, you shouldn't be able to do blah, blah, X, Y, and Z. But for me, I really do believe that as soon as you're elected to any form of representation, whether that be council, MP, prime minister, whatever, you should not have any affiliations or input to any businesses that will be a conflict of interest. And I find it so strange that isn't a thing. Why is that not a thing? We've got so many Conservative MPs who have connections to the NHS, for example, and it would be in their best interest to privatise that because they'll get more money. Now, that is going to affect their voting decision on something that affects us all in this country. I think that we need to have a good look at our system and how it works. We can't keep allowing the people who are in charge to make all the decisions if those people have vested interests in things like this, whether they are current MPs or former MPs. It's just not good enough. It doesn't
I
serve the
can't
people.
understand this, because as a councillor, if I have an interest in an issue, I have to declare an interest, stand up and leave the meeting. I'm not even allowed to speak. And yet in Parliament, they just have these rules that they can it strikes me as being absolutely, and that would stop it, wouldn't it? If we just stopped them, if you have anything to do, you can't speak about it at all. That would stop an awful lot of funny goings on. Paul, I'm going to turn this round. Does this in effect mean that our government is not dealing with the climate crisis firmly enough? I mean, have a think about the way our government is dealing with the climate crisis. Are they compromised?
The system's compromised. Again, I'm not really particularly going to blame our government. They really don't have that many ideas. So what they've said is we're going to make all cars electric by 2030, for example. Which, like on the surface, they'll say, well, that's a great policy. That's a. Are you shaking your head, Laura? Why are you shaking your head?
No, sorry, I'm getting angry.
Okay,
because I want to come
so-
back to what you're saying.
So we'll see if I get there. But so they have this 2030 thing, and when you think about what that actually means, it sounds really good, doesn't it? It sounds really good. Does it stop us having this system in which you have to have 5% growth every year? So capitalism works on this system where you have to grow your economy. You have to consume more resources, 5% more every year. Does that work? So can we make 5% more cars? Can we make more electric cars? Probably. But what are you doing in that instance? You're digging up loads of natural resources. You're digging up minerals from poor countries in Africa that are rich in these minerals, and you're probably having people on ridiculously small wages doing incredibly dangerous work in order for you to create these batteries. And then people will drive around, and richer people will drive around, and this is nothing against people with electric cars. I know you've got one, John, but it's a really good thing to try and do. But this shouldn't be about individuals. So the individuals will be thinking, I'm doing my bit. Most of the pollution, by far the vast majority of pollution, comes from people with lots and lots of money. It comes from big capital. That is the problem. Unless they change their ways, we're not going to get around this. And the other way is, who can afford to buy these electric cars? Would we not be better to invest in, like, I don't know, more cycleways, even with electric bikes? That people can afford. That you can get them for just over £1,000, which a lot of people wouldn't be able to afford, but a lot of people probably could over a different form of transport. You could be thinking bigger here by thinking smaller. Do you know what I mean? We need to consume less. That is absolutely unequivocal. In order to change and try to reverse the effects of climate change, we need to consume less. That means eating less meat. That means having less dairy. That means just being a little bit more sensible with everything. And it means the end of eternal growth. It also means supporting countries that can't afford to go to this economy to do so. So whether that's helping them to get renewable resources and stuff. And again, like wind power by 2030 is going to be our 100% responsible for our energy needs. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I would love that. That would be great. I'd be dead proud of our country for doing that. What about the rest of the world? The people who've had all their resources stripped from them. That we are a small nation, but we could lead the way in trying to help others out of the situation that our nation has helped put them in by stripping them of resources.
Thank you so much. That was great, by the way. Thank you. Laura, last question. Now, we have discussed this before on Political Unmuted, I'm quite sure. But it's raised its head again. And it's raised its head again on Socialist Think Tank. So tell us all about it. Is Durham University, you've been talking to working class students from Durham University, so you're an expert now. Is Durham University a safe place for working class students?
Well, first of all, let me say, after Joe Solo, I have a lot to say about the Boris Johnson's Green New Deal, and I will be coming in on that at length. So just be prepared for that. But in this instance, yeah, so Paul had read an article that was written by one of the students, Lucy Milburn, and she'd come out and talked about this as an issue. So we thought, right, let's get them on. And Paul has had experience of this in the past. I think he's had friends who've gone to Durham University and has heard a lot of the stories of what goes on there. So it was really interesting to get them on board. We had was 4 of them. Was it 4 students from Durham University on 5? 5, yes. On an episode of Socialist Think Tank, just to tell us about their experiences and was it really an issue, and yeah, it is really an issue. Some of the things they were talking about, it's really strange for me because I was like listening, I was like, yeah, that doesn't sound. I'm not surprised by that at all. But a lot of people, a lot of the feedback we had was people being very surprised, like, oh, I can't believe this happens. And I was just like, I think because I'm a working class northerner that I'm just used to this sort of behavior. But some of the stuff was pretty horrendous. Like, it's become really clear that it's not just about the institution that you're in, but it's the family you're born into, and if they allow you to be raised in a certain way. These teenagers were very much like, we are better than you and we know it. So when anyone with a northern accent came across anyone with a northern accent, it was like, oh, are you the waiting staff? And oh, they had a game where it was like, see who can sleep with the poorest student, and look for the people with the northern accents because they'll be the poorest ones. And there was a lot of stuff that was quite shocking. Please do watch the interview because, and the thing is, all the students that we had on were, they were very vocal about the experiences, but they were okay about it. They'd gotten through it, and their whole aim was to raise awareness about it. And it does seem like Durham is still an institution that is severely elitist. And as much as I think the heads at Durham kind of want to change things, or at least change the perception of things, they haven't really gone that far to change anything. I'm sure people can remember the students' union having a fancy dress night of the
Yeah.
miners versus the police officers,
Yeah.
taking the mick out of the miners and how poor they were during the miners' strike. That is, for a university that is based in the place that experienced that, is absolutely disgusting and not acceptable, and the university should have come down hard on them. But
Yeah.
I kind of on a personal note, I feel like Durham is a place where people who got rejected from Oxford and Cambridge go, who've got a bit of a chip on their shoulder. We've got some amazing people here who are well worth going there, but these people come from, rich,
Sorry,
high-ranking families, and there does seem to be an element of elitism in that whole university. And yes, it is absolutely a problem.
I was about to ask you a question based on this. Do you think that this is a flawed education system? That this is an education system which allows people who've got money to get the qualifications that get them to a university like Durham? Is it not the fact that our flawed education system is allowing all these people to go there, and so few northern people to get there in comparison, that they therefore seem like fish out of waters? I mean, or do you think that it's just a set of bad eggs who managed to turn up out of the blue?
No, I don't think it's a set of bad eggs that are just sort of a singular to most people. I think maybe not an educational issue, but it's certainly a societal one. We've been brought up in a society that has elitism and has a hierarchy. And I think we've been fighting for a long time for working class people to realize that they deserve a seat at the table as much as anyone else. And the fact is, the working class people have to fight harder just to get through the day and have to go and work, hence the term working class people, to be able to pay for a roof over their heads, for food, for heating and all of that, that they don't get the opportunity to flourish. And I think the experience and the wealth of knowledge and the talent and the creativity we've got in the Northeast, or the North as a whole, and across the working class communities up and down the country, is absolutely massive, but we just don't get that opportunity. Now, people with money, let's face it, we're looking at people, the vast majority of people in government at the minute, like a huge percentage, came from one school, Eton. Are you telling me that Eton produces all of these clever people? No, they just produce people who can be trained to be in power. They train them to be better than other people. They all have a lot of money, and they get taught that their money means something.
Thank you. That's thank you. You've been brilliant on that, Laura. The a slightly different way, wasn't it? This time, I allowed individuals to talk much more, sort of on their one thing than normal. I normally whip through everybody. One question for you listeners before we go. I was brought up at a time when there was a meritocracy. If you had brains and ability, there was a structure that allowed you to get on. In the bad old days, it seems like that's gone, doesn't it? That seems to have been replaced by a democracy, a pedigree democracy. So, do you agree? And then we'll pick those comments up, and we'll going to see you in the second half. You know what happens now? We're all going to wave at you enthusiastically. We're going to play Joe Solo, and then Samantha's in charge, and we're going to look at your comments and tell you what we think of them, and you can tell us what you think of us. See you, Fab.
My name is Jack Atkins and I'm not afraid, and I live and die by this vow that I've made. The only good fascist, a dead one, they say, and a rhyme we are. When I first left all them months ago, I told him I'd come not to kill but to cure. Well, for an ambulance driver my shot's pretty sure, and a rhyme we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. Fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. I told my mother, now mother be strong, for the left way is right and the right way is wrong. And you can stick that on my grave when I'm gone, for I'm a real we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. Fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. Cast may be cast, and the cast may be cast, but you armies of darkness, you best do your worst. 'Cause to win, yeah, well, you gotta get past us first, and a rhyme we are. There'll be no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here, no pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. No pass around, no pass around, no pass around today. The fascists have come for our freedom, and we ain't gonna give it away. There'll be no pass around here today. Keep the red flag flying here.
Hello. Yes, as was mentioned, we can't hear the jingles, so we're just kind of guessing when we can talk. Now is the time for us to talk through your comments. And yeah, I mean, as always, there's been a fantastic 122 comments and 21 shares. Thank you so much for every comment, every reaction. Only 4 reactions, by the way. You can get like and love. That's not right. Why
Count
is
one.
it so-
Oh, did you say that? Oh, he's guilty. He's guilty. He's guilty. Chauvin's guilty.
Oh, breaking news.
Ooh, thank you, Musa.
Good.
I'm getting
What
like.
was count 2? What was count 2?
I don't know. We need this
So he
explaining
wasn't
to
guilty of
us.
murder, but he was guilty of something else.
No, he was. I think this is second
guilty of
degree
both.
murder, so he's guilty of it. Shall we? While that's coming in, Laura, did you want to talk about the climate like you mentioned in there? Count 3 guilty.
Okay. Sorry. Musa's gonna message me.
That is such a relief in a way because he clearly, in my view, did murder that man. I think no person in the right mind would think that he didn't murder that, and that would have been such a worrying thing for justice. I think we'll see some backlash. Anne, we're talking about the George Floyd trial, the man who the policeman who kept the pressure on throughout when the man was clearly no longer a threat, or perhaps wasn't a threat in the first place. So yeah. They try to say that, like, you know, he might have had underlying health conditions that caused it and what have you. So I don't think it matters when you're putting your knee on someone's throat.
No.
So yeah. So big news. Big news.
Massive.
Now Laura's gonna cry.
She
Laura
often
always cries, don't worry.
she often does, but it's because she's a caring soul and she loves people.
You say you need to wait for Musa to message you before you're going to talk about the thing you wanted to talk about? Or
No,
was that about-
no, it's fine. I basically wanted to mention something on when we're talking about the climate stuff with Boris Johnson. Yeah, the vested interest and blah 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 and all of that. But actually, that is forcing us to speak about the tiny little nuances in it. Effectively, what they've done is Boris Johnson has lifted something from the 2019 Labour manifesto and gone, people like that, let's lift it. However, they've committed to spending 12 billion. And the problem with that is 12 billion to normal people sounds like a hell of a lot of money. 12 billion, imagine what you could do with that. But actually, the stuff that needs doing to change the whole system and to change our infrastructures and stuff for to help climate crisis, we were going to put 30 billion towards that, and of course we were told we were crazy and it would never happen. 12 billion would not pay for the whole infrastructure. If they want to push electrification of cars, for example, lovely idea. If we could do it in a sustainable way that wouldn't hurt other countries and all of that, lovely. But it's gonna cost more than 12 billion. So that's clearly not their plan. Their plan here, for me, and call me a cynic if you will, for me it's for them to go, right, okay, we're going to pay 12 billion, everyone think that's loads of money, and we'll put the onus on every individual to buy an electrified car, which costs a bomb. People can't afford electric cars, they're really expensive, so it will be our fault. But also the infrastructure that you'd need up and down the country to run those would cost more than 12 billion. In actual fact, that money, if they can't make everybody in the whole UK have an electrified car, 12 billion would go a long way to support public transport infrastructure that was green, things like that. But they don't care. People haven't looked into this deeply enough to see that actually that 12 billion is not going to make a blind bit of difference. It is again another trick to make us get them into another form of capitalism, where they're going to make money from the businesses who will give us this wonderful system that'll cost us more. And let's not forget that 12 billion is what is that, like, it's not even how much the failed track and trace system cost.
Yeah, it's
Look at
about
how well that's gone.
less than half of what the failed track and trace system that went to Dido Harden cost. So yeah.
So we can't for 1 second think that we can't put faith in this government that they're going to do this. They've taken this from the Labour manifesto because it was popular, because it is an important issue. They don't think it's important. They're looking for votes. That's all they're looking for. They're not going to put this money where it matters. And it's not even enough money to make a huge difference anyway. And again, as always, the Tories want to put it down to the individual responsibility. It's every person's responsibility to recycle, to have an electric car, to do this, that, and the other. Let's start tackling massive businesses, massive corporations who are the main contributor to climate change. So yeah, that was my little rant that I really wanted to get out. 12 billion is not enough.
Stuart?
Yeah, if the government had any commitment to like electrified cars, they would change the building regulations so that new builds would have to have charging points. But they won't, because it'll cost their mates who build these houses a bit more money. And the Tory party got 11 million quid one year, didn't they, off donations from house building industry. So all these new houses that you think are going to be class, they all need refitting if we want electric cars, if we want electrification. And no commitment.
I love Jane's comment there, by the way. Probably about 6 billion after you set aside the obligatory shareholder dividends for Tory donors.
Right,
I forgot to mention that Greensill is also a Tory donor. Even though he worked for free for the government, he donated some money to the Tories. Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad.
Just commenting on what Stuart said, it's not just charge points, is it? It's solar panels and batteries and ground source heat pumps and things like that. All these could be built in with the house, but we're building new houses that in the next few years we're going to have to retrofit brand new houses with this kind of stuff at the cost, of course, of the householder. It's horrific.
This is a pattern as well, isn't it, of the Conservatives taking some policies that sound a bit like policies that the Labour Party were going to bring in, and ruining them, and people go, oh well, that's a Labour policy, but it's not. It's like the when they talk about furlough and all of the grants they give to businesses, everyone was like, the Conservative Party have finally found socialism. No, it was all about trickle-down economics. It was all about keeping the business owners afloat. It was not about the workers. And, the government could have installed a version of universal basic income and helped people directly, but it did it through the existing business infrastructure, and therefore ended up giving loads of money to their friends. And that's how it works.
I almost 100% agree with you there, Samantha, apart from they have the only thing they've done is they've stolen the language of the Labour Party rather than the content of what they said, and you're absolutely right. And just one thing I'd like to comment on, when they did the furlough scheme, they took a lot of the credit for it. Most of the work was done by Unite the Union, and Steve Turner was who's running for General Secretary at the moment, actually did a lot of the work on that furlough thing. So whilst they didn't want to do it, and you're absolutely right on that, a lot of the time there's an unsung hero in that process, which isn't just Steve Turner actually, but the trade union movement is the unsung hero in that particular thing, and it doesn't get mentioned much. So while I really do 100% agree with you, I wanted to bring up the fact that there's a bit of credit there in the trade union movement for the furlough scheme, because it wouldn't happen without them.
Yeah. Mark brings up, there are so many things we could do, like make all new houses have solar panels. This is something that I'm hearing people say quite a lot. But again, we've got this system where property developers get away with murder, don't they? They can do whatever they want, and the Conservative Party aren't going to change that, because again, it would mean telling their friends they can't do whatever they want. They don't like doing that. There may be some lobbying up there somewhere. I mean, we can't even get the government to remove flammable cladding from buildings after it's been proven that flammable cladding, it can kill people. Shock horror. We're having the government pass that buck down to property owners as well, so they're not going to take responsibility for averting the climate catastrophe.
Did you say they've put more? Did you say they've put more up close to Grenfell? They've started to clad buildings close to Grenfell with the same cladding. Like they're not even just like not dealing with the situation. They're actually doing it again and thinking they're going to get away with it. It's got to be a case of, are we going to let them get away with it? The answer is yes at the moment. So
it's not a lot we can do while we've got a Conservative government, and they've got no reason for there not to be a Conservative government, because they've got such a strong majority. I'm gonna come on to Chris's comment now.
Oh, that's a good
one. It's a fair one.
Bobby Dazzler.
So he says, in 2013, Labour won 94 seats with a 64-seat majority. In 2017, that reduced to 72 with a 52-seat majority. And things that basically, if Labour lose 8 seats, then they will have lost a working majority for the first time in 100 years. What are the panel's thoughts on this? So a couple of things. First of all, like I said, in Shildon, we are hoping to gain a seat. So we're doing our bit for the team. And that's one of the reasons the majority dwindled down, because we had a by-election, because one of our long-serving councillors sadly died. And it's really difficult to get people engaged with local politics. I don't think we communicated effectively during the by-election. And we ended up opening the door for a Lib Dem. What are the panel's thoughts on losing a Labour majority? Losing a Labour majority on Durham County Council would be an absolute tragedy for the people of County Durham, right? Yeah. The situation would be that the Labour Party would likely still be the largest political group, but there would be a larger group of independents, and independents obviously have a range of political views. Some of them may be ex-Labour Party members who actually are quite aligned to the left, or even further left than the Labour Party, and some of them are further right than the Conservative Party and further right than the BNP for that matter. So you've got a real range of independents, and it will be up to the Labour group and the other political groups to ally themselves or to win over different independents of different political leanings to get policy through. At the worst case scenario isn't actually that the Lib Dems get more independents on their side. The worst case scenario is that we just end up fighting for 4 years and not doing anything, and not getting any meaningful progress for the next 4 years. That's terrifying, and that we're talking about the council who look after all of our looked after children. They look after all of the adult social care, apart from, if people are rich enough to pay for it entirely themselves. Even then, it relies on what the council infrastructure is. So there's a lot at stake, and I don't want the council to be stuck fighting itself for the next 4 years. I want it to have a working majority so that we can get things done. And don't forget that when the Conservatives failed to feed our children during the pandemic, it was the Labour Council that stepped in and provided free school meals when the government refused to do so. And it put that in within 72 hours of being told that there was going to be no funding for it. And when the government refused to provide funding for the special educational needs budget, it's our Labour Council that put 5.5 million of their reserves into it to enable our most vulnerable kids to receive an education. So you can fault the council for a lot, but it has a lot of responsibility. And for the vast majority of the time, it exerts that responsibility, or whatever you want to say, very diligently, professionally, and effectively. And I worry that a real split across the council puts that in jeopardy. Anybody else want to say anything?
I agree, and that's exactly what I was talking about when I said they're going to chuck us out because there were 10,000 potholes in the first 2 months of the year, and we struggled to get around them, and we didn't all mend them, everyone properly on the day it occurred, these 10,000 potholes. And because the sort of people throw dog dirt bags into the trees and they're not removed, and they're going to chuck us out for that. And sort of, you're absolutely right, this is the council that, unlike almost every council in the northeast, still give people on benefits exemption from paying council tax.
We've been asked for a clarification on where we're talking about. So we mustn't have mentioned that it was Durham County Council that we're talking about. Just set of elections outside of Westminster, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like because everyone else does it in stages. So we do it every 4 years, and it's everyone. It's the entire council rather than like a third every 3 out of 4 years. So
yeah, but the majority of the country now are all doing it this year, because even the ones who were staggered to do it last year couldn't do it. So like we've got Peter North, who we interviewed in one of our first Origins. He was supposed to run like last year, and that's been moved on. So he's now hopefully going to be elected this year. So this, it's a big deal this year. It's huge. It's like literally everyone.
Can I do my Pete impression?
Do you want Pete? Have you got a Pete impression of you? Oh,
He's a bit sideways in videos. I love Pete very much. He's tremendous. So this thing about like Labour slowly losing the majority, I think I can see this disconnect in the country. We're not asking enough questions. Oh, there's Sarah going, yay. Did you like my Pete impression, Sarah? So so I can see this disconnect, and this is happening at parish level, it's happening at county level, and we have got some really tremendous councillors who are in the Labour Party who have Labour values, and we've got other people who want to be on the council, and we've got other people who have totally different. Sarah loved the impression, by the way. Have totally different values to the Labour Party. And it was really interesting today. I did a survey on YouGov. It was a YouGov chat thing, and it was saying what the Labour Party should be. And it was like, do you associate with the Labour Party was the first question. I was like, yes, I do. And then like the rest of the questions were for people who associate with the Labour Party. And one interesting question that came up, and it was like, should the Labour Party compromise with Labour values in order to get power? And it was like strongly agree a little bit and stuff like that. Well, I already think the Labour Party has compromised. You've got a compromised position through the broad church. You have already compromised. And this is one of the things I massively disagree with in centrism as well. When people are centrists, they're like, well, we should be centrists. Well, in that case, what do you want to you mean pragmatism? Well, what do you mean? So what centrists tend to say is, well, you know, I've already gone from the central position, and now let's compromise with the right further, which lets you to be centre-right, really. It comes out as centre-right. So if you're centre and you compromise with the right, you become centre-right. Now, if you start from a compromised position, and the other thing is, like, what's the point in being in a party if you just want to compromise with the values? Like, if you're in the Labour Party, surely you should have Labour Party values. I think Labour Party values are already a bit of a compromise for me. You know, like, I think that's a sensible thing to think. You know, I've joined a political party because I think that's the best way out of it. My values are different to that. That's why you join a political party. Otherwise, I'd be in the Paul Daly party and I would only accept my own opinion. You know, so I don't really understand why they would ask Labour Party members how much they are willing to sacrifice Labour Party values. Labour Party values are majority values. What are you, like, you know, of the members? What are they even talking about? But apparently a lot of Labour Party members are very keen on compromising Labour Party values. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? In what way? And I feel like that's happened a lot over the years. People are like, oh yes, we'll compromise, we'll do this and do that. No, just have some values, stick to them, and if people don't like them, let them kick you out. That's fine, but stick to your principles, do it. Just believe in something and do it. That's where I am. And, you know, that doesn't... One of the things I believe in is listening to other people. That's part of my Labour values.
Yeah, there's our ex-MP. I remember, like, this is the one thing that really stuck with me. It was after, obviously, Jeremy Corbyn, and our ex-MP obviously submitted a massive, like, it was a huge deal. There was a leaflet that he sent around all of his constituents about how he was not aligned with Jeremy Corbyn, he didn't like Jeremy Corbyn, blah, 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 and all this, and it was really annoying. Anyway, he then later, I believe after he'd been voted out, said in a high-profile paper, what is the point in having principles if you don't have power? And I was like, okay, right. But I think that for me just absolutely drew the line in the sand of where me and him were completely different politically. Because my argument was, what is the point in having any power if you don't have principles? That is what we're fighting against. We're fighting against people who don't have principles but want the power. We need to be the people who want to go in with the principles and get the power as well, to be able to employ those principles and bring them to fruition. And it just, oh God, it pissed me off so much. It really did. We need more people like that. Like,
you've had a bit of a run-in with that fella this week, haven't you?
Apparently, I've ignored it. I don't go on Twitter a lot, so somebody else can reply to him on my Twitter. It's interesting that he describes how our Brexit position was a problem. I'm like, and whose position was that? The Carl Wilson amendment?
I went campaigning with that person just one time.
Can we just clarify who that person is for the audio people?
Phil Wilson, MP, ex-MP. Please find him on Twitter. Excellent. It is a joy.
Yeah, and they were talking about the Brexit position, and they said the Labour Party Brexit position, and he actually corrected somebody and said, well, it's my position that the Labour Party's come round to.
Because he wanted the power. He didn't give a shit. Honestly, man.
We'll never know if he would have joined Change UK, but we do know that other people were not going to stay in the Labour Party who were his closest allies. Anyway,
yeah. Right.
Anne Willis has just said the Scarlet Pimpernel. Absolutely right, Anne. He came to 1 hour, 1 hour's worth of meeting in a whole year.
Kicked over a sign that said hope 3 times and shouted at some women in a thing about violence against women. Yeah. Good times. Good times.
But
Talking about
the,
Anne Willis, she put something up about the climate thing, how it's about a whole range of things to do. And I absolutely thought that was really good on that. It's gone now. I can't read it out, but I just thought, wow, yes, that's brilliant. Well done.
I missed it. I'm sorry, Anne. I'm sure it was very, very poignant. I'm sorry. I missed it.
It wasn't poignant. It was just, it was a good point. So that Chris Hood is still desperate to know what we're going to do if we lose power.
Does he mean power within local politics? Like
power, he means basically the majority on Durham County Council. What are you going to do if we lose the majority?
we need to be doing grassroots organising, and we need to get community groups going. That's what we need. That is what we should be doing anyway. Because that's what makes a difference.
My interest in the moment is like I want as many Labour candidates to get in as possible, but I am absolutely committed to the idea that I don't think that anyone on the left can win without massive political education. I think this is a long-term project. People need to be told, well, not told, people need to be able to discover what the truth is about how things are working. And I think we're fighting fires at county council level. I think if Labour don't have the majority, then there'll no longer be Labour to blame. Now, it doesn't seem to be at the moment that Conservative-controlled councils are getting blamed for either the council's decisions or the government's decisions, and they're all Conservatives. It's a bit weird. We've got this really weird situation where everyone hates Labour, including Labour. So, like, people within the Labour Party seem to hate the Labour Party. People without the Labour Party seem to hate the Labour Party, and we seem to be everyone's number one target for a number of reasons. Probably because the last 4 or 5 years or whatever. But who knows what's going to happen? You've got a leader at the moment who is the leader of Durham County Council at the moment. If Labour lose, will that person still continue in that role? I don't think that's a decision that anyone could make. Possibly, if Labour lose control of that, do you carry on business as usual, or do things change within the Labour group? And then is it a coalition of independents who are aligned to left-wing politics? There are all sorts of different things. I don't think anyone could possibly know what would happen if Labour lose control of the entire group, because they won't lose influence on the entire group, but things may have to change in the way things are dealt with. But let's hope that people just get behind one another and get the right candidates into County Hall to make sure that we have the maximum protection from Tory austerity.
See, I see it in a wider context that we are the last county council still be Labour. We're the last, and it's just so clear that the Tories have decided that they are going to force their way up through the northeast, and they're starting with Durham, and they got Darlington, and now they want to move north, and they're throwing resources at it. The degree of drivel coming out from northwest Durham is huge. The continual, even Paul Howell, who is a decent guy, but they're just singing this very vitriolic, very anti-county council song tune all the time, and the resources are being directed there, and they're just determined to get rid of us. And I just hope to God that we prove them wrong.
Is he a decent guy though? Really, like, because he might be a nice enough man. I've heard him like really double down on calling people coloured and things like that. I've heard him speak over women in the interviews you did with him regularly, and really try to. I don't know if he is a decent guy. I've seen him totally lie about his principles when he was doing the river dance on that thing about Brexit. You know, his leg kept on kicking because he didn't believe in what he was saying. I don't think he is a good guy. I think he's just like a man who owns a lot of properties in County Durham who probably, under my rules, wouldn't have been allowed to stand in the county because he didn't live here. You know, and then he's been... Do you know, I keep on talking about capitalism. I was going to say he's been a capitalist, but I meant he was capitalising on a situation in which people think the Labour Party has become too Tory, and their revenge for that is to vote Tory. Like, our system was to try to challenge that and try to make sure that the Labour remembered its working class values. And then people come back in and decide their revenge against us is to vote Tory more. Weird.
I think on county council we're forgetting something. Like, our power as the Labour Party doesn't get derived from the council. You know, it's not the council with allies in the Labour Party. It's the other way around. You know, and you know, the Labour movement. When we get councillors in at county council, there are our allies in getting the change we want. We don't really just want a load of seats for no reason. You know. Does the power dynamic change of what we're doing if we do lose the council? Will we still be fighting for the same things? Yeah. Will we still be struggling on for the same things? Yeah.
I think my point would be that the county council at the moment is run by people according to Labour principles, and that has a certain value for the people of County Durham. And what we have is a whole cluster of voices saying that this is evil, this is wicked, and people are listening to those voices whether you like it or not, Stuart. And there is a real danger that we're going to have that voice, that Labour voice in county council control either watered down or lost altogether. And that is a big worry to me, because if we start bringing in some of those Tory values and some of those Tory things, then if there's a shift away from those Labour values, those century-old Labour values, I worry terribly. I'm hoping that we cling on and we see it through. But when you look at the country as a whole, the Tory lead across the country as a whole is so huge. You've got to be concerned.
And that's the worry, isn't it? You know, if we do lose a seat if we do not fail to gain a seat in Shildon and Dean Valley, it'll be because people voting for a very specific candidate, not because of anything they've said or any of their promises, or even that they're a nice person, just because it's anyone but Labour. And I think people really need to use their votes responsibly. And, you know, I understand that the Labour Party in power in County Durham hasn't always been as responsive as you might want it to be, or as in tune with its communities as you might want it to be. And you might say, historically, the Labour Party may have taken our communities for granted. What you need to respect is the fact that people like me and Stuart are coming through saying loud and clear, we don't take anybody for granted and we want to work with our communities to do the right thing. And if you don't vote for people like us, what you're telling us is that our values don't matter, and you just gotta I actually had somebody tell me the other day that it didn't matter all the volunteering that I'd been doing through COVID. It didn't matter that I'd been out buying flour for little old ladies. It didn't matter that I'd been out getting prescriptions for people, and I organised like a Halloween competition to keep the kids entertained during like really dark, miserable lockdown. None of that matters just because I was standing under a Labour banner. And I just think if you're going to argue that people vote for the Labour Party blindly and that's wrong, then you need to make sure you're not blindly voting against the Labour Party, because that's just as wrong. You need to look at your candidates, look what they're doing in the community, and it's really unfair to be told that you're just not worth voting for just because of what party you're standing under. I respect people who stand for different parties who are actually involved in their community. It doesn't happen here. Yeah. So anyway, John needs an early night because he's going to the ball in the morning, and I don't want him to turn into a pumpkin. So we should probably say good night.
Yes, thank you.
So good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Thanks, everyone.
See you soon, everyone. I need to prepare something. Hang on. Keep talking.
Dancing.
Oh, yeah, and we can actually do it now. Thank you so much. Don't forget to like and share and subscribe and do all those things, and join Socialist Think Tank, become a member. That would be really good. You can donate if you want as well. Always really nice. See you later.
Thank you.
Keep the red flag flying here.